Welcome to Nottingham Business School Business Leaders Podcast, where business leaders tell their stories and share their insights. All our guests have a personal connection with Nottingham Business School. So listen, learn, enjoy and share.
Welcome to another episode of the Nottingham Business School's Business Leaders Podcast with me, Mike Sassy. Rob Barker was dreaming of a career as an international rower when he graduated from Nottingham, Trent. He was a top club rower who wanted to find out just how far he could go. However, 5 years later, after realising that there were other rowers who maybe were even better than him, he felt slightly lost. Looking for a new challenge, he discovered the fitness industry. In January 1994, he took a job as a sales rep with Precor UK, selling rowing machines and fitness equipment, and he didn't look back. 2 decades later, he was president of Precor, and in 2020, he led the sale of the company to sports equipment giant Peloton for a reported $420 million. He stayed with Precor for 2 years, then stepped down in 2022 to start a new role as investor and senior exec with 3 industry-leading health and fitness firms. He and his family have also moved to Portugal, where I'm guessing the weather's a bit better for indulging some of his favourite hobbies, including Ironman triathlons. Rob Barker, thanks very much for joining us for this episode of the Nottingham Business School's Business Leaders Podcast.
It's an absolute honour to be with you today, so thank you for asking me to come.
Great stuff. Thanks, Rob. So, there was a lot in that introduction there. I know that recently you've taken on a lot, so let's explain to us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, it's great. A lot of people talk about transferable skills these days, but you don't realise you've got them until someone asks you to help them out. And what happened is I relatively abruptly finished my global CEO job and left Peloton. And we were living in Seattle, my wife and the 2 young kids. And then my wife wanted to come back to Europe, fancied maybe a bit more of the warm weather than we had in the UK. So we said, why don't we give it a go? And just as we were thinking about that, a friend of mine who runs a premium chain of health clubs in Portugal, Homes Place, asked me to invest and also work part-time. And then latterly, a company called eGym asked me to do the same. I was good friends with the founder, and so made a small investment there, and now work for eGym. And eGym's a great company, recently valued over $1 billion. So it's like lots of fun, great people, and I'm a very lucky man.
So you just dropped in there, eGym, Munich-based, I know, worth £1 billion. Just explain what they do.
So eGym wants to really turn healthcare from repair, which it is today, into prevention. And all of the science and biology is there to do that. It's just the industry and the healthcare system, the fitness industry and the healthcare system has never really come together, along with employers who clearly care about the health and fitness of their own staff. They've never really had a way to come together to solve a joint problem. And eGym provides sophisticated, smart hardware to work out strength machines, plus AI programming. And there's a division that also works with employers selling access to clubs. And it works. You know, the NHS have recently bought a couple of lines and put some pre-diabetic people on it. And they've come off the drugs, some of them. So it's amazing.
Good stuff. So over the last 30 years, you've built a substantial career in health, fitness, sport. Did you plan that in the beginning, or is that just something that's right place, right time?
No, not really. I kind of yes and no. I didn't plan a career. I wish I had done a better job of that. I drifted a bit straight after Nottingham Trent Uni. But I knew that I didn't want, it sounds a bit kind of strange, but even at 15, 16, I had this kind of feeling that we're so lucky to be born on the planet in the first place, and it's an amazing thing. Surely I've got to try and do my best, and that includes helping others. So rather than just get an average job in an average company and live an average life outside of London, I kind of knew that I had this itch that I needed to scratch in order to do something that was great for everybody. So I knew that. But of course, when you tell a careers person that, or you tell your dad that, they kind of tell you just to, look, come on, mate, get a job, get some money in, and let's go for it. So I wanted to do something in that area. So I was in the right place at the right time, in so much that the fitness industry and private gyms were coming. So I was working post-uni in a leisure centre, and we converted one whole squash court into a gym. It was the first gym in Maidenhead in Berkshire. And as Steve Redgrave opened it, it was that.
That would be the Steve Redgrave.
Yeah, exactly.
Olympic.
Yeah, I know. It was that, and it was just a squash court, but it was packed. And I thought, I'll tell you what the next big wave is in this industry. It's going to be around working out indoors on machines. I need to get into that. So I just saw a job popped up at Precor, went for the interview, and became the London sales rep.
Right. So, okay, bit of right place at the right time, but you were looking for something big to do there, weren't you? But rowing had been, you mentioned Steve Redgrave, Britain's greatest Olympian, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rowing was a huge part of your life, and you had big international ambitions. Looking back, how did all that fit in? How do you reflect on that period?
Yeah, with great joy and gratitude, because I was so lucky to stumble in. I didn't go to like a private school that had a rowing kind of team. I was in Maidenhead, which is on the Thames, and there's a local, town club. A couple of juniors in there, half falling down clubhouse. But I went in there and fell in love with the idea of winning with others, working hard, and I was inspired by couple of Great Britain senior guys that were rowing out of there at the time. And for the first time at age 16, I could see a channel for this desire for constant improvement and to find out how good I could be. The fact that I found out how good I could get means that I kind of felt like I was a winner. Now, there's disappointment that I wasn't good enough to be in the Great Britain senior team and go to the Olympics. But we travelled the world as a club team and did a few races, and I've got such happy memories. So it was the first time I felt I'd found my feet as a person, and admired the dedication and the highs and lows of any sports person would tell you they've had.
So that idea of pushing yourself to see how far you could get, that's something that's a thread which has continued through your professional career.
Yeah, exactly. And you know how sometimes your weaknesses, if used right, can maybe be your strengths a little bit. And I didn't know this at the age of 16, but the older I get, the more self-aware I finally get. And I think it's because I felt a constant need to prove myself, not in a heavy way, but I just thought none of us know how good we can be, none of us. So what you do is you try and be the best you can, and at some point you'll find out. And whether that is, a great club rower or an international rower or a gold medalist, or in business, you might say it could be, are you in the department? Are you?
Well, wait a minute. Are you a sales rep, or are you the president? That would
yeah,
be...
and it doesn't really matter. I got just as much joy from being the London sales rep as I did from being the global president in Seattle.
But you kept pushing yourself.
Because
it didn't happen by accident, did it?
Oh no, I had a plan, and so I again post uni, I was the first in both sides of the family to go to uni. So it's not like we had a load of people I could reference and parents, friends, and things like that to go and steer me. So what I did is I just created my own training plan, just like a rowing coach would, but all around business. Started reading marketing books, put myself on the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I had to pay with my own money because the company wouldn't do it. So did that, and then I just speak to people and find gaps. And so I became my own coach that was a good 15 years, because it wasn't until I was about 37 that I actually got a manager who coached me. So, I have this kind of thing. It sounds a bit harsh, but it kind of isn't. But every morning, the person staring back at you in the mirror when you're cleaning your teeth, they're the person who's, through all the good and bad in your life, are going to be there. So they're the person who should take ownership and go for it, and that's you. Now, of course, none of us win on our own. And in fact, the more senior I got, the more I realised that all of my success was actually in the agency of others. But I had a plan, and I just kept working it.
Okay, so if I just take you back to the beginning of that plan, I think, 1994, Precourt, sales rep, what do you know now that you wish you'd known then?
That you can outwork people, like 95% of the people that you're going to go up against, or compete with for jobs and things like that. I think if you have a positive mindset, a rational positive mindset, be this rational optimist was the phrase I used to use all the time and still do. So you can see things for truly what they are, no sugarcoating, but at the same time always be optimistic that tomorrow's going to be better because of my actions today. And so I would have loved to have gone back to my slightly lost, hope it goes okay, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens, sales rep guy, and just put my hand on his shoulder and say, it's all going to be okay. Just go for it, man, and have a plan, stay humble, respect everyone.
Be optimistic. Be rationally optimistic.
Yeah, be rationally optimistic, seek mentorship and coaching. And the really cool thing these days, it's like, I'm 58, but I feel I'm only halfway through this thing. I would love to restart. It would be so cool because in my day, and it sounds like I'm a dinosaur, but a lot of the really great insights were locked away in these handful of business schools or a handful of books in a library somewhere. And now you can just click and get the actual author to present to you for 15 minutes their thing. And so you can set up your own set of coaches and mentors, which is what I still do these days. And you get the best possible coaching in the world. Isn't that amazing?
Well, I'm going to say you can click onto the Nottingham Business School Business Leaders podcast and speak to people who've done it like yourself.
Yeah. I've probably learnt more from my failures, frankly. But.
Well, okay, so let's poke around there then. So you were 27 years with Precourt, rising through the ranks. You took on a variety of management positions, although you started sales and marketing, I believe. So what are the important leadership skills that you developed as you went on?
I think what I realised is, as a leader, and that could just be the leader of a small team or a division or a big company, a global company like Precourt, is you're always on deck. And what I mean by that is your behaviours and your approach and your actions will always be observed, and you're essentially like a little radio tower that's broadcasting permanently, and maybe, I don't know, the more senior job you get, the higher the radio tower. But you have to start with your own personal performance and your own set of culture, values, beliefs, mutual respect of others, and the way you approach things in terms of setting clear, very simple, clear direction that your average person on your team on their average day can deliver and be a rock star. And so I think there's a lot about culture. There's definitely the rational optimist that we already talked about, because it starts with the leader. You have to realize that your success is going to be with others, but you also have to build a cohesive leadership team. I've had times in my career where I inherited a team that wasn't quite as cohesive as I wanted it to be. And looking back on that, they cause a lot more problems than you think. So you kind of work on the health of your team, and then at the same time set that clarity through a simple set of tools. And that's actually what I'm going to give a lecture later tonight to a few hundred people here, just about the simple tools that anyone can use.
Talking about, you've been talking about the period in which you started and which your career has gone through. And I've done a number of episodes of this pod with successful business like yourself who've built their careers essentially in single companies over those decades. Now, the world has changed out of all recognition. But is it still possible for leaders, for would-be leaders, for people who are just starting out in business today, to make a similar rise through the ranks of a single organisation, company, or institution?
Oh, of course it is. It doesn't happen that often, and I do think it's healthy to constantly be learning. And if you need to move companies or organisations to continue your development, then you should do that. But at the same time, you shouldn't kind of underestimate the number of companies. All companies want great people at all times. So unless that company is going through hard times and having to lay off, really good people, you should assume that if you're one of the top performers in your company, soon someone is going to want you to do something extra. And as long as that is interesting, you can do it with people that you enjoy being with. You can learn and develop. If your rate of progress and development is just matched by the rate and development and progress of your organisation, why not stay with them and surf the wave? One of my things I'll say tonight is about surfing waves. You can go too early on a wave and somebody else is going to get it. You go too late and all you do is bob around in the sea watching other people's get it. But if you can hit a wave, like I did with the fitness industry, I surfed it my whole career and I'm still surfing it now. It's amazing.
So, but if you were 27 years with Precor. I mean, I know they were owned by different people under different guises. I get that, but as long as you were enjoying yourself, as long as you were being fulfilled, as long as you felt that you were, as an individual, progressing, might you've just stayed there, even if you hadn't been CEO.
Yeah, there's one time, I think the right time at the right place for me where I did get particularly lucky is AMA Sports, which was one of the world's largest sporting goods company, 5 billion turnover, that owned Arc'teryx, Salomon, Atomic, Sunto, Mavic, Wilson, the tennis and team sports business. They acquired Precor because fitness was a big thing for them. And then I went from running Europe for Precor, reporting into Seattle. So really my boss was 8 hours time zone away and, the odd phone call. And at that point, I was on the European leadership team for AMA Sports. So there were about 8 of us. So then that started the most incredible business school learning by doing kind of period in my life where I observed these amazing brands go from small to huge, and I sat in the meetings and learned. But because I had that mindset about constant learning, I wouldn't just sit there. I'd try and meet the people afterwards, learn.
Right,
if they were reading a book, I'd go and read it. I'd meet them 10 minutes early and ask them what they thought. So you kind of work like that.
So you realise you were on a journey. You realise that you were, as you say, you're constantly learning, and that was what you wanted.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of the battery packs kind of in me is this constant need to continue learning, and I want to do it forever. It's not a do it until. And I did observe again in my career that a lot of people take their foot off the gas when they get to about 30. Life gets busy. They've done their MBA, they've got promoted a couple of times.
But family?
Yeah, and do they keep that rate of, I'm sure they get taught here about compound interest in finance. But if you apply that to your own skills, over the 40 years that since I left Nottingham Trent University to today, if I worked it out that if I just got better 15% every year, I'd be 268 times better. And so
that's quite a profound thought.
Yeah. So what you just don't stop, and you just keep going, and you got to be humble, but at the same time, you got to keep going all the time.
But you say you don't stop. Do you think all successful leaders have that battery pack?
I'd hope so, because you're humble, aren't you? If you realise there's a lot you don't know, it keeps your feet on the ground. It also makes you appreciate that lots of people around you know more than you do. So I think most successful leaders will definitely surround themselves with people that are better than them and feel comfortable about it.
Yeah.
And they'll always think, when you self-assess, you always think, I could be better at something.
Okay, but I guess what I'm really asking is, are you born with the battery pack, and are you the Duracell bunny that has it in there already, or is it something that you can acquire just by intellectually looking at it and thinking, oh my goodness, I need a battery pack, I need something. Can you go and pick it up?
Yeah, you can decide. Yeah, we'll talk about that tonight with everyone. It's a small set of simple tools used brilliantly well. If you're a business builder, which I've been and lots of people are, you think about builders. They don't invent their tools. Normally, someone who builds even the most amazing building will use tried and tested tools that other people have used, and they work great. And what they'll be is excellent at combining them and using those tools. So if you commit to that, I think you're in good shape. That's why you need to come, early on, get to a place like Nottingham Business School and start putting tools in your toolbox.
Hey, you're going to be popular with my boss, mate. So now we're going to take a quick break from our chat to mention the MBA programs at Nottingham Business School. As we've learned from many of our guests, effective business leadership is about confidence, adaptability, and thinking strategically. These are the key ingredients to delivering innovation and impact in crowded, competitive markets. So if you are ready to transform your career, visit ntu.ac.uk/MBA to explore the MBA programs at Nottingham Business School. We're one of only 1% of business schools worldwide who hold the prestigious Triple Crown accreditation. That's ntu.ac.uk/MBA to find out more. Now back to the show. Probably the most high-profile period of your career was in 2020, when as president of Precor. Is it Precor or Precor?
Precor.
Precor. Sorry, I've been saying it wrong all the way through.
That's right. It stands for Precision Corporation. All engineering companies, they had a terrible name.
But it does all come back. Everything comes back to engineering, as I'm told. So, Precor, president. You were president, and you oversaw the sale of the company from then owner Amos Sports, who you've mentioned, to Peloton, the big American company, for $420 million. So, what leadership lessons did that process teach you?
Yeah, it was amazing. So luckily for me, a year or two before, we had sold Amos Sports for $5 billion, and I was part of the team that worked on that, but I didn't lead it. My boss and the CFO led it. So if it had been a football match, I was on the field and got my knees dirty, but I didn't score any goals. And so suddenly we at Amos Sports realised that the return on capital employed is double for apparel and footwear versus hardware like a ski or a treadmill or a tennis racket. So we said, let's sell some of these hard goods businesses and then redeploy the capital into footwear and apparel, which is what they've done. So suddenly I kind of get tapped on the shoulder. Right, Rob, it's in the middle of COVID. We can't fly over and help you. You're kind of on your own. We've appointed a banker out of New York. Can you sell Precor? And what I learned, because it was kind of bizarre, because you couldn't actually meet face to face, was even though I'd never led a sale before, was don't be scared of stuff you haven't done, because I turned down a job in my earlier career because ultimately, on reflection, I was too scared that I might fail, and I regretted that. And even though things have turned out great, but I promised myself I'd never do that again. And so in this particular example, it was right. I'm going to help lead the sale, and take my style, which is to be very straightforward and not sugarcoat, and like this rational optimist thing, not sugarcoat the document. So the bankers wanted to put stuff in there that was kind of borderline salesy,
right.
And I was like, no, it's coming out. If you can't prove it, don't put it in. And so what happened is when we actually engaged with Peloton, their due diligence was super fast, and they really appreciated our straightforwardness and honesty. So I think that was a big thing. But even talk about taking calculated risks, I haven't really told this story to too many people. The bankers were struggling to get in at Peloton, and they send all the emails and hit up their normal contacts. And I just was sat at home, and I thought, Peloton would be great owners. So why don't I send an email to the founder just telling him he should buy us? But of course, he gets all these emails, he never opens them. So I made a fake press release that was post dated for the future, said Peloton stock rises on acquisition of Precor. And when he opened the email, I said, John, I've got 30 seconds before you delete this email. Here's 5 reasons why you should buy us. Within 10 minutes, he emailed me back. The next week, his team came over and we shook hands on the deal. And you just think no one's going to write that in a business book.
I was going to say that. Well, where do I start with that? You took a risk there, didn't you?
Yeah, but I wasn't going to get fired for it. So you kind of got to stay in your swim lane to a point. But if an organisation is missing something, obviously that's going to be good for them. Sometimes in life, it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission. And I've seen good people be a bit scared of doing that. Obviously, I has to be very calculated, and they appreciated it. And we did the deal, and everything worked out great. Sadly, Peloton then hit a bit
difficult times, and that was what I was coming.
Just because of the failure to predict what was going to happen after COVID.
So they've subsequently endured tough times, and so having been very proactive and involved right at the start, and then obviously you parted, and they have suffered after you've gone, quite profoundly actually, haven't they? So how do you reflect on that period now?
Yeah, I reflect on it still with a bit of sadness, but also the fact that you learn more probably during the tough times than you do in the good times. So I learned a lot about how even when all around me was getting a bit crazy towards the end, I knew that my set of beliefs and values and that of the people at Precor were very solid and sound. I reflect back that because sometimes people say to me, hey, how come Peloton missed this post-COVID new consumer behaviour?
So let's just explain, what is the state of Precor at the moment now?
They're great. It's a great company with some great people. A lot of the people I know who were middle managers that I thought would go on to take my job, and others have left. But
it all lost a lot of value, though, didn't it?
Well, what happened is after COVID, there was a big race from all of the normal leaders in fitness equipment like Precor to go and re-establish their market shares at the same rate. And we were about 500 million, 450 to 500 million in sales. And so if you kind of just go for it, then you should really get back to that. And actually there's the post-COVID consumer is going to the gym even more. So you could get a little bit bigger. But what happened is Peloton was going through these difficult times in its consumer business, which was nothing to do with Precor. And what it did is when it started to have to cut a lot of money, some of those cuts hit Precor, and that's where it got tough. But the team that's there now have got still fantastic products, great service, and if I was opening a gym, I'd put Precor in there amongst e-gym and a few others.
Oh yes, because your new interests. Okay.
But yeah. So, but it's what I learned actually. If I could put my thumb on one thing that was missing at Peloton, that even the founder John Foley probably wishes he could go back, is he didn't have a culture of candidness that would allow others to come up with a different opinion. And so what happened was nobody knew what the post-COVID consumer would do. Would they stay at home? Would they go back to the gym? Would they do a bit of both and be omni-channel consumers of fitness? And we started to get a Precor. The data came through all on the treadmills and on the screens and everything. We could see everyone was going back. So I took that data to John, but John famously was saying that all gyms are dead. It's like Blockbuster and Netflix. There won't be any gyms after COVID. And sadly, John had invested heavily in manufacturing facilities and inventory and all kinds of things that then soaked up their cash. But John himself is a nice guy. We all make mistakes, but that was a big one.
So you touched there upon your new role, one of your new roles, with global fitness tech company eGym, where you're a shareholder and a senior executive. One thing I look at this as an outsider and say, is this where every business career is? That idea of tech being digital tech being at the core of everything we do now?
It's not the core of everything we do. I think that what there is firstly, clearly right now there's a massive step change happening, a bit like when the internet first came. It affected things like retail. So Amma Sports, for example, their traditional model was, we will invent incredible sporting goods, we will sponsor famous athletes, we'll curate these incredible brands, but ultimately we'll be wholesalers, we'll sell them to sports stores, and those sports stores will deal with the consumer. And you had the consumer still wanting great sports equipment, but they could get it direct from us because of this thing that came along that was tech, and we could have brand engagement and fulfillment with them. And so AI now is like the equivalent of this big step change, but just a bit like the waves. There's a lot of talk about AI, but you have to turn it down to a typical scenario. How would it change? So, for example, you're in Nottingham, Mike, you go to a small health club, there's a personal trainer in there, you pay your personal trainer some money. Well, at the moment, you're just going to get advice from that one individual, and no matter how great they are, they've just got their own set of experience and their own set of advice, and your results will just be compared to their database in their head of other clients they've got. Whereas when you give them this co-pilot of tech, you still want a human-to-human interaction, but what happens is that same trainer who's eGym kind of enabled, they'll put you through some tests on our machines which will compare you to everyone that's ever done the tests, and the AI, using all the latest sports science and the results of millions of workouts, will come back with the best possible program that then that person can help deliver to you. So you go from being just reliant on one trainer in your little club in Nottingham to getting the world's best coaching, and that's good for everyone.
But it still comes, as you point out there, it still comes down to you being physically present to start with, you having spoken to an individual face to face and having done the reps or the runs or whatever. So that's still at the core of it. AI is almost an enhancer of the experience.
Yeah, in that particular scenario. So AI is not going to fix your plumbing. It's not going to serve you a coffee. It's not going to, I deliberately picked an industry that would get supported by tech changes and not destroyed by it. Yeah. We're not talking, this is Kodak and we've been making rolls of film and suddenly digital cameras come along. What we're talking about is what jobs will still be delivered by humans and that will just get amazingly better. But let's not underestimate, like if you're, for example, an auditor, junior auditor at one of the big finance companies, you used to have to pull invoices, a random set of invoices, and check them through. Now they're just plug in straight into our SAP system at Amma Sports they did, and they could look at everything.
Because you're famously big on experiences, on experiential learning, on you said people will pay good money for a great experience. So that's at the core, and AI helps you. I think you've used this phrase before as well, just as for the experience upgrade.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the waves that we can see, because last week is DeepSeek, next week it'll be something else. You can't predict the.
So DeepSeek being the
Chinese
AI.
That's in the media right now, which is copying a product that was invented in the West, in the US, but it's just half the price. Well, that's not something that China does a lot of. But if you think of the things that you can see clearly, if you're the surfer and you're bobbing around, which is a bit like your career, you can definitely see this scenario that I told you about, the personal trainer or something like that, or a designer that can suddenly put out content for their media platform much more easily. You can see that. So you can jump on that kind of wave. But the idea of overly predicting the future, you kind of, you're betting big there. And that's why I always respect founders, because I am super lucky to have had the career that I've had, but I've never founded a business. And Philip, who founded eGym, the things that these founders do. So anyone who's out there that's listening that is a founder, I take my hat off to you, because that's an incredible job.
So we're hoping here at Nottingham Business School that in the coming years, several of our partners, the students, people who are coming through the ranks now, will perhaps found their own businesses. You were here in the 80s. So I ask you to look back on your own career and perhaps give one single piece of leadership advice picked up during your time, during your decades, that you might give to the leaders, future founders currently studying here.
Yeah, I think it was what I mentioned earlier. I think the single piece of advice that I can give is have a plan that is firstly around being a rational optimism mindset, because people love being managed, promoting, working alongside people that are like that, and then grow by adding to your toolbox, winning with others, constantly being hungry, and then when you do win, share it with as many people as you can, because success is for sharing, it's not for keeping for yourself.
Great stuff. Hey, Rob Barker, leader, entrepreneur, rational optimist. Thanks very, very much for joining us here for this episode of the Nottingham Business School's Business Leaders Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's been great.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Nottingham Business School's Business Leaders Podcast with Rob Barker, why not try previous episodes with the former Vice President of Manufacturing for Toyota Europe, Marvin Cook, OBE, the Director of Nottingham Contemporary, Samuel Takan, or the Managing Director of Seiko UK, David Edwards. This episode of the Nottingham Business School Business Leaders Podcast was produced by Russell Bingley and presented by Mike Sassy.